Vermont Supervisory Union Board of Directors meeting for August 25th, 2021. Before I read the agenda, we would like to amend it to include some of the new nomination forms so that people can get on the job without waiting another month. We'd like to move nomination forms down to the consent agenda where the other nominations are. So if we.
And I have one position increase in FTEs that we'd like to present during that same time.
And one other position Jim would like to explain during that same time frame during the consent agenda. So would there be a motion to amend the agenda to include that?
So
Those noms.
Second.
We have a nomination for Fran, second from Ray. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? That motion carries, and the agenda will read as follows. Public comments is item 1. Finance and related operations, item 2. The consent agenda, which we just added to, is item 3. There are no policies this evening. The superintendent's report is number 5. Chair's report is number 6. Any other issues that can be brought before the board without action can be included in number 7. And there's a huge list for your information, including budget status, student enrollment, and quite a number of nominations that have already been included and signed off by the chair. If we have no other changes to the agenda, we're open for public comments.
I actually have something. Blake Harwood's dad, he goes to Molly Stark Elementary. We've made numerous attempts to get transportation for him and failed emails, failed phone calls to principal, bus or transportation coordinator, and superintendent. Giving the superintendent some slack because I literally called him for his or her office earlier today.
That would be me, and I didn't speak to you.
Yeah, no, I left you a voicemail or your office a voicemail this afternoon. So my wife told me about this meeting. I'm like, well, no better time to address the situation. The past 2 years, Blake has been receiving transportation from his daycare. This year, we were told that no child will be transported other than from their physical address. I find out today, my son was put on a bus transporting children to schools out, daycare. Not looking for excuses, I'm looking for answers here. Because back when I was in school, the law was put into place, no child left behind. This kid, if you could see the picture my wife took, this kid was jumping in the air, ready for school today. Luckily, this week, my wife has it taken care of. Next week, she has children. She works at a daycare herself. I work for the state of Vermont Agency of Transportation, so my schedule is 6 a.m. till 4:30 p.m. Her schedule is 7:30 a.m. until sometimes 4:30 p.m. We have to send him to daycare. He's 7 years old. I am not, and I don't know if anybody else has kids around here, but I can tell you right now, I'm not going to put my 7-year-old down by Route 7 because I live on Cereals Crossing at the border of Pownell and Bennington. That's just, as a local firefighter, as a parent, you can't in good conscience put a kid down by a major road like that. My 12-year-old, she's smart enough to stay back, wait for the bus, then come out. 7-year-old, I can't I wouldn't even put a, 10-year-old out there. So I'm looking for answers here because it seems like I can't get any anywhere. And my wife has tried numerous times. I mean, honestly, how many years have we been doing this? The start of school. I heard that WTN is covering the big, Southern Vermont Supervisory Union mess up with busing, dropping kids off at wrong spots. So, I mean, I know personally that we received a packet at home. Should have only, it was probably only a week or two before school started, but in that packet, shouldn't there be something that says, hey, where are you living? Okay, this is your address on file. What is your transportation situation? Do you need busing? What location are you being bused from and to every day? If that changes, then send a note. I mean, I've had thoughts of just dropping them off at Loretta's, our daycare provider, and saying, here's a note. Give it to the bus driver and give one to your teacher, saying that you are to be picked up here and dropped off here every day. But I don't want my kid left at school and then I have to hurry back because I work Southwest region. That includes Rutland County and Bennington County. So I could be from here to the border of Middlebury when I get a phone call saying, hey, Blake's still here. You need to come pick him up. I've had that happen once. Luckily, I was in Bennington. I could leave early. But I'm at wit's end. I excused because, like I said, I only phone called your office just today and this afternoon, so.
If the chair allows, this is public comment and the
Yep.
policy doesn't allow discussion, but I can make a statement. So I met today, let's go back to what was going place last year.
Mhm.
We did the primary residence last year only because of COVID restriction on how many kids we could put to a bus. And we were operating with, less than 30 students on each bus. So we had to go to that primary residence rule. So today, I don't know what time you called my office today, but I met with our transportation coordinators this morning to give guidance to buses because I'm sympathetic to families on this issue. So what we want to avoid, so we're going to try to accommodate families that need transportation to childcare facilities, and that just went out to principals early this afternoon, looking at my email. Because what I think should happen is that we should be able to accommodate you for that.
Yeah.
What we can't accommodate families for is changing them by a day-by-day basis. So if that, if it's not to the primary residence, but it's to the childcare, but here's the guidance. We can't, it's got to be a bus from the school that your child attends that goes to a stop that daycare is available for you. Like we can't create another stop to go to. So if the instructions I gave today was that if you said Molly Stark?
Yeah.
If there's a bus from Molly Stark that goes to where you're close to your daycare facility, then we're going to move forward and allow that, and we should.
So there's 2 buses that drive by Loretta's house that go to Molly Stark.
But is there a stop near that? Because we can't create additional.
She is a stop.
Then that, I'm telling you, that should happen.
Last year, during COVID, when he was going the 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, or 2 days a week, or whatever he was at, I can't remember.
Yeah.
He was being transported from Loretta's.
Right.
So
I don't know what address you would have put in, because last year was the restrictions was to the primary residence. So you must have to put that in as the primary resident. So we weren't doing two different locations yesterday because of how few students we could actually transfer because of how many front of us. But hopefully the resolution today that went out from my office is that, that should happen.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you.
I'm also here to talk about transportation.
Okay, state your name, please, and where you're from, so the record.
Yep, my name's Kayla Ball. I don't live in Bennington County. I live up in Johnson, Vermont, but I have a niece who attends Mount Anthony Union Middle School, and she lives in Brook. I heard about the issue with transportation and how you guys have stopped transporting kids from Willowbrook Drive to the middle school. And I'm not looking for answers. I'm looking for you to listen and just really take in what I have to say about this. This isn't okay. I lived in Willowbrook as a kid. I know the route that they are forcing these kids to walk, and it's not safe. And I've heard of the updates that have been done that apparently have made it more safe. I feel like crossing Route 7, the highway, will never be safe for an 11-year-old or even a 13-year-old. I think that this is an equity issue, especially when it comes to the winter time. You have to assume that all parents can be able to put their kids in proper winter clothing to take that 40-minute walk, which it is a 40-minute walk. And that's just not possible. These parents and these kids live in low-income housing because they need help, not because they have access to everything.
Caleb, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I do want to point out that this board doesn't deal with the MAU transportation issue. So to change that, you have to address the MAU board.
I was told that this was the MAU board.
This is the SVSU board.
Okay, could I get that information by you, or do I have to figure that out?
When the board meeting is, I can tell you when that is. Someone here might be able to shout it out quicker than me.
September 15th.
September 15th?
September 15th.
You got it.
The same process, Kayla. It'll be a Zoom link as well as a physical meeting.
Okay, thank you so much.
But if the board chair allows me, because I don't want you to think I'm pushing you off to the MAU meeting. I'm aware of the situation, but you should understand that that's not new. There was not a bus from Willowbrook last year. It's not like that it just happened this year. And you're right, it is because of the walking improvements for safety, for crossing the roads and stop buttons and crosswalk alert buttons. It is within the MAU policy for high school and middle school is you can walk up to 1.5 miles to get to school. And are tracking a radius, a 1.5 mile radius of that school. And Willowbrook is within a 1.5 mile radius. And when we used to do with our software to plan bus routes, Willowbrook was in what was called a red zone because it didn't have all the sidewalks that connected it from Willowbrook to the middle school. And now with the improvements that the town has done, when we put that route into our busing software, it's no longer a red zone because there are sidewalks that go connect that school from there, and it is inside the 1.5 mile radius from the middle school. But certainly anyone would have the right to come to the MAU board and ask them to consider changing their policy or making an exception to their policy. But right now, I have a policy that I'm following from the board that it's a 1.5 mile radius. Inside of that, you walk. And you couldn't walk prior to last year, but there were students walking from Willowbrook last year. There was no bus last year for all students from Willowbrook.
I know a lot of kids were homeschooled last year because of COVID. I would just ask, and I can talk about this at the September 15th meeting. I still think there's a lot of issues with that, especially because this is a low income area and access to proper gear for being able to walk that long, especially in the winter, is a huge issue that comes up for me. I know that someone who lived in that area, I did not have a winter coat until maybe I was 14, 15 when I got out of that situation. So to expect kids to have access to that, I think is absurd. But I can ask the board to reconsider on September 15th.
Are there other members of the public who wish to make comments? Thank you, Mr. Harwood and Ms. Ball. No further public comments. Finance and operations.
I would also like to make a comment. I had my hand up. I'm not sure if you have access to see that.
I'm sorry.
We see it now. Yep.
That's okay.
Yep.
So I'm also running into the same problem with
Yep.
Mount
Your
Start.
name and where you're from. Yep.
Yep, my name's April Dunham. I'm a resident of Bennington County. So I live on more the east side of town on Fillmore Street. However, because of the redistricting years ago, my daughter goes to Molly Stark, which typically is not an issue except for when it comes to transportation. So me and her father both work early morning shifts. We have a babysitter who's on Gage Street, who for us, it's like a 2-minute drive compared to going to Molly Stark, which is a 10-minute drive. Just to put it in perspective of how close she is to us compared to Molly Stark. So we had transportation allowed at our babysitter's house before on Gage Street. I know last year with the pandemic, it was rough. We had to make some, changes. But now they're saying that they can only be picked up and dropped off at their primary address. My daughter also has an IEP. She has a diagnosed disability, and as is my babysitter who has a degenerative eye disease and is unable to walk long distances or drive. Because my babysitter's just over the line on the Benhall side district of Gage Street, because it's cut in half, they've told us before that they can no longer make accommodations. We are in the process of working with them this year, but it's not a guarantee, and I haven't heard back yet. But we are concerned about transportation and her safety as well, too.
I don't know, April, if you were on for the beginning of the meeting where I said one thing. This is not the Union Elementary School District Board, so it's the same to this gentleman here. Feel free to come, and that'll be the first Tuesday in September, which I think is September 7th. That would be the Union Elementary Board District if they wanted to make some different accommodations. I don't know if you heard what I said in the beginning of the meeting, that I believe that we should try to accommodate to get childcare, because I know how dependent families are. But at this point, I can't add a bus stop. So if there is a bus, the directive that went out to schools this afternoon is if there's a bus from the school that your child attends that can get them to their childcare, then by all means, they should be able to access that bus.
Well, there's 3 buses that go right by every day there.
Yeah.
And then with the disabilities, I would like accommodations made, but it sounds like this isn't your board that can make those decisions.
It would be the union. Well, I really don't want to talk children specifics in a public meeting. So I'd be happy to talk to you or connect with you tomorrow, but especially if we're going to be talking about disabilities, I don't want to do that in a public meeting. I'll just repeat what I did say, that if there's a bus that can accommodate you leaving your child's school that gets to a child care center, we're committed to allowing that to happen. Which is a shift from what it was last year during COVID.
Okay. So is there a way to get the information to you so me and my husband can talk to you?
Yeah.
Or you can forward me your email and phone number, whatever easiest way.
You can call the superintendent's office tomorrow and ask for my administrative assistant. I will leave her a note that you will be calling.
Okay, and I'm sorry,
Name
your
down.
name again?
Superintendent James Culkeen.
Okay. I will
Superintendent's
reach out.
office.
Okay. Yep, I'll call there and reach out tomorrow.
Okay.
Other members of the public wish to make comments? I just want to say there's always an adjustment at the beginning of the season. And the year that we've just completed has not been very good. And I see
another hand up.
Although it's listed for April Dunham, I don't believe that's April Dunham.
That is not. My name is Russell Dunham. I'm Asri's father. There's things that my wife did not mention that really have irked me the wrong way over the years. Again, she's already gone over the redistricting, which I think was inappropriate and wrong, and I'm not going to get into that part of it. But you have lost my daughter 5 times. 5 times you have lost my daughter. I've been in panic mode. You're going to give me a heart attack. I've got her a phone purposely so she could get a hold of me when she got lost. This is a big deal. We need to take it seriously. We need to make changes. I don't want promises. I don't want just, okay, this is not the time for it. We need to make changes in this town. Losing my daughter that is 7 years old is wrong and inappropriate. Somebody turned her phone off today. I purposely got her a track phone so I could call her. I personally turned that on this morning, put it in her backpack. I called her because it was 30 minutes past when she should have been at that bus stop. That went straight to voicemail. That phone was turned off by somebody at the school. I am personally thinking about taking legal action at this point because losing my daughter is a concern. And everybody in that room right now should take it seriously. I had a meeting today that I had to get to. I had to get her grandparents to go search for my daughter. Then my wife, I kept calling her at work. She had to leave work or try to get out of work early to go find my daughter. That bus did not show up for an hour and 40 minutes after school released. We are literally 6 miles from the school. That bus usually takes 15 minutes to get to that bus stop every year. I understand that it was the first day. Things happen. I get it. But it needs to stop. This happens every year. Me and my wife have to fight you, the school, the bus service to get her services, regardless of disability or not. I don't even care about that. This should not be an issue anymore. We pay the taxes. We should be able to get services that we need. This should never be an issue. I don't know why this district makes it an issue. I did not grow up here. I moved here, and this is the worst I've ever seen it, ever. I want answers. Can you guys give me answers, please, of why this keeps happening every year, year in and year out?
Mr. Dunham, thank you for your comment, but this is an issue that should be resolved with the superintendent's office. So I would encourage you to call the superintendent so that this could get resolved. This is not something that the board can even begin to organize.
This is what you tell me every year. Somebody always passes the buck. No lie. I understand what you're saying. I get it. I do. I called the school last year, or not last year, but the year before, because of COVID last year, but the year before. The principal told me it was the bus service. Well, I know what the bus service told me. It's a school problem. So I called the school. The school told me to call the superintendent's office. Superintendent's called me. She said, that's not our issue. That's not our issue. That's the bus service issue. So please, again, stop telling me it's not your issue. Somebody please help us. What do I need to do for you guys to go do something for us?
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Dunham. I would encourage you to call the superintendent's office.
Okay. So, okay. I appreciate your time, but I'm really sick of the passing the buck thing. So again, we're passing the buck. Nobody's taking responsibility. Nobody's trying to help us. So we're going to call the superintendent's office. What am I supposed to do when they tell me it's not their problem? Because that's what they're going to tell me again.
I'm sure that's not going to be the case, Mr. Dunham, so please do that.
How? Because I've called every year since my daughter started your district. So how is that not going to happen again?
I can't answer all your questions, Mr. Dunham. I can just say that we can't micromanage that type of a situation as a board.
That's not a micromanagement. That's not micromanagement.
It most certainly is. So I would encourage you to call the superintendent's office.
I'll await your call.
Okay. I wish you guys would do more for me and you had more answers for me and you would understand our situation better. I really do. Because it's not just me, it's not just my wife, and it's not just our kids. The next time you lose my daughter, there's going to be a big problem. There's going to be a huge problem. And if I have to get legal action for you guys to take this seriously, I will. That's not a threat. That's not a warning. All that is saying, completely typical. If it was your kid, would you be concerned if your daughter kept getting lost and you couldn't find her for hours? Would you be concerned?
Thank you, Mr. Dunham. Your concern is noted. Are there other comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 2, finance and operations. We have a treasurer's report for June 2021 and July 2021.
I'll move them.
We have a motion to
What
accept.
is that?
Again.
I don't know how to get off of it.
Second it.
We have a second from Leon?
Leon.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Treasurer's reports for June and July of 21 are accepted. We move on to the consent agenda, including minutes, warrants.
Love that.
Mr. Kinney has a motion to accept the consent agenda. Do we have a second?
I'll second it. Leon.
Second from Leon. Thank you. Discussion. Seeing none. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Ray is abstaining. We have one abstention, Ray Molyneux, and the motion carries. We have no policies this evening, which moves us to the superintendent's report.
Consent agenda. The other nominations.
We,
I thought you added it on before the meeting.
we
Okay.
added it on
Okay.
under the consent
Okay.
agenda.
That's fine. Did you want to know the proposal for the,
That's a good point.
yeah, but that's a little bit different.
Perhaps we should revisit
Yeah.
that.
Right, and I have Nick Galtz here, and I believe Kate Abbott here for what, you know, she can speak to what she's asking the board for. And Nick, I don't know, if I shared the screen with you if you, or you can physically give it to those who are here.
My
And then-
apologies for changing the order.
Did you want me to go ahead and share the rationale?
Before we do, I do want to thank, I want to thank particularly the principals in the Human Resource Department for our, the amount of work that went into onboarding staff for the start of this school year, and particularly the high number of staff that were brought on as recent as this week to fill. We've had a difficult time filling many positions. We still have as few open, but not as many open as I feared. So I can't thank them enough for work that the finance, human resources, and the principals all do to get these people interviewed and before you, just in time for the start of school. So I want to thank them for that. And Kate, if you would like to address what, for those board members here remotely, if you want to, Nick can put this up on the screen as I shared. You want to put that up?
Yes.
Okay, it's hard not knowing. Do you want me to go ahead and share the proposal?
Yeah, I'm gonna put it on the screen, Kate. Just give me 1 second.
Okay, great. So overall, basically what we're seeing in school and in early education is that we have a lot of learners who during the pandemic have not been doing some of the physical activities that we usually do, such as playgrounds, walking up and down stairs, just basic children's development kinds of activities that children do in a typical year. And so children coming into the early education program are showing increasing motor needs, specifically related to physical therapy. We currently have a 0.6 physical therapist, pediatric physical therapist, who helps them with their motor skills. We would like to increase that 0.6 physical therapist to a 1.0 physical therapist to address the needs that we're seeing in our learners. And this will actually be offset by our neighboring school, who Wyndham Southwest is also looking for a physical therapist, and they will be subcontracting with us for some of our physical therapist time. So in effect, it will be an increase of a 0.4, but 0.2 of that 0.4 of physical therapy will be offset by a cross contract with Wyndham Southwest. So when we look at the total cost of the proposal, we're going to be increasing from a 0.6 to a 1.0. But the total cost difference will be around $10,000 after the Wyndham Southeast cross contract. So do people have questions, or should I explain that a little bit more thoroughly, or is that adequate? Oh, I'm sorry. I misquoted that because I was trying to look at my screen and your screen. So it's $28,000 total cost after the $19,000 reduction from Wyndham Southwest.
I'd like to ask a question.
And Kate, I'm sorry, the version that you have is correct with the number. I have the wrong salary number. Renee updated that for us based on Medicaid. So if you give me a moment, I can put the correct number, but what you gave was correct. The,
10,000 what I had in an email.
yes,
but
this is my rush.
I didn't want to speak up with those numbers there. I thought.
I will put the correct one up for people to see.
Okay, it's 10,000. The actual local impact is 10,472.32. So Wyndham Southwest, that 0.2 FTE that they are asking for will cost 19,194. So that would be income. And the total cost of the difference was in the end for the local tax impact will be 10,472.32.
I'd like to ask a question.
Jack?
Please.
So earlier I read that it was a
You muted, Jackie.
There you go.
yes, I read that this was a IEP situation, and I wondered why this fund is not coming out of the special ed fund instead of the early ed fund.
So that's a great question. We are also looking at bolstering supports in the school age, but some of this impact is related to COVID and some of the impact is not. So, and because we're not quite sure until we get through this one next year of seeing children. So what we were looking at doing is offsetting some of the costs through Medicaid, but some of this work is truly preventative work. So not every student that's going to be receiving the PT services will necessarily have an IEP, but we want to try to engage early with children so that they don't end up needing full motor services for years with physical therapy. So we are trying to take the same approach at school age, but I've been able to navigate that through contracting, not hiring. And what we're trying to do is provide preventative supports for a portion of the PT's time, and then IEP supports for a portion of the PT's time, as well as some consultation with the classroom teachers. So it's split funded in effect to allow the PTs to do various roles within their day.
Thank you.
Jim, I have a question as well. It's Todd Wilkins from the Arlington School Board. We're currently looking for a physical therapist as well to service at least 2 students. So I don't know what the plan for this person is, if it's something that can be shared with us at some point, and maybe Bill can work out the details on that.
I think across our PT team, we can support 2 students. That shouldn't be an issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there other questions regarding this additional?
Then I would ask your approval.
Then we would look for a motion to approve this
So move.
position.
Second.
We have a motion from
Leon.
Leon and a second from Fran. Further discussion?
I do have a further question. Am I still unmuted?
You're fine.
Okay, so my next question is, how long would this person be engaged in this type of activity? For instance, after this year, or 2 years from now, 3 years from now, or will this be a permanent position?
So in effect, taking a look at the entire school district, we have seen our physical therapy numbers climb throughout the last year. And in part, like I said, because we aren't sure how much is COVID impact and how much is truly children that have greater motor needs. So what we've done to address those needs, we had 2 school age PTs that had 122 students on their caseload. So we were not giving those children sufficient amounts of supports and services to get off the caseload. So I contracted additional supports and services in the motor domain. So now we have 3 PTs to pick up that load, but also a piece of those PT times are providing preventative supports for the kids so they don't get in such a bad shape before we've intervened. So to provide that early intervention. That being the case, you know, we're hoping that that additional contracted service this year is going to allow us to truly assess the needs, reduce some of the needs by preventative service, and then do an assessment over the course of this year about what will be needed in the future. Because I didn't want to hire 1.5 people because I don't believe this is a long-term situation. I believe this is a short-term situation, but we still have to address the needs of the kids coming in.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Well, in other words, you're saying we'll reassess in the coming year.
Correct, absolutely. And that's
Thank
why we're doing a little bit of contracting and asking for a slight increase in FTE overall, because we want to just take a look at what is temporary related to COVID and what we're really going to have to do long-term. I don't think we have enough information yet to make that determination.
The reason I asked that is because maybe, you know, after this period is over, maybe that what we really need is another a PE teacher for early ed to continue and more frequency.
That's a great thought. We'll be keeping a careful watch on our learners this year to see how they are doing. Thank you.
Other discussion? We have a motion to increase the physical therapist to 1 FTE. We have a motion to second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And the motion carries. Do we need any other information that we didn't address in the consent agenda?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to the superintendent's report.
So I mentioned our difficulty filling positions, and one of those difficulties is filling substitutes. We have a class scheduled for substitute training, and last time I looked, we have no one applying to do it. We did look at our sub rates and whether we increase them could attract additional people to apply and willing to come work with us. So I asked the director of HR to put a grid together to present to you on our proposal. Couple of things that I'm not worried about it exceeding our sub budget. I haven't seen that happen in my time here where we have our line item in our budget for substitutes, because mainly our fill rates aren't what we would like it to be and when we plan for substitutes. So even if we increase the rate, that first question, we can afford to do it. The other concern, you know, I would have even proposed maybe going higher to be more competitive, but you also have support staff that we'd be approaching what their starting salary rate is, and we had a concern about paying a higher rate than what we're paying our support staff. So director of HR, I asked Nick Galt to put a recommendation together to me. So then I asked him to come this evening to explain it to the board. So you might have to put that up on, Nick, for if you can share your screen again for those board members who aren't present physically.
Yeah, so as Jim said, filling subs was a difficulty. Certainly COVID exacerbated that. Our fill rates going into COVID hovered around 50%, meaning if we had, say, 50 absences on a given day that required a sub, we might fill 25 of those. Certainly, we'd like to see higher rates. We know nationally school districts see as high as 85%. So certainly higher rates would support, would hopefully support higher fill rates. As you can imagine, through the pandemic, our fill rates dropped into the teens and sometimes into the single digits. Just looking back at a day in May, just a randomly selected day where we had uh, 35 absences that needed fills, and we had six substitutes, so that was a 17%, meaning there were 29 absences that required a sub that didn't have one. That's just one day in a month. And many days echo that, some are worse, a few are better. The rates that we've proposed here accomplish a few things, hopefully. One, for those who are tapped into the idea of the $15 hourly rate, does inch us closer to that, which if that ever becomes a reality or a requirement, then we're getting closer. As you can see, that $11.75 was nowhere near a $15 threshold. It is mindful of those rates that we have established under our collective bargaining agreements. So for example, a paraprofessional that works for us on a full-time basis, that entry level rate is $14.73, and we were mindful of that when proposing the increases here, so as not to offer, say, a paraprofessional sub or even a teacher sub without a degree, a rate that exceeds that. But essentially across the board, it was a $2.25 increase. It was not a percentage increase. That way, it had a larger impact on the paraprofessional and teacher subs that don't require advanced degrees. We see a lot of substitutes that have those credentials, and so we were hopeful of increasing those rates more. And so we did a flat dollar increase proposal. And the hope really is that we can promote these rates. We have done some promotional activities in the past, putting them in the paper, all over social media, even advertising in the movie theater. You may have seen that in the past. We're hopeful we can use these increased rates to really push harder and try to get folks interested in subbing. Beyond that, there's not much else to report. We're hopeful that this will get more people in the building.
Nick, what are the actual mechanics if you have, you say you threw out 50 or 80 people that fall out? How do you actually cover the classroom?
So the buildings, the principals and their staff get creative. So for example, it varies by building. At the high school, they have some more flexibility to use internal coverage with teachers because of their schedule. Most teachers typically have a free period for their prep. They can essentially, we can buy their prep away from them and they can cover a class. So if you have a math teacher who's out, one of their colleagues can cover their class. And that's a good high quality sub because it's one of their colleagues. Their schedule is structured so that they have the flexibility to do that. Middle school and the elementary school can't really make that work. So oftentimes it's internal coverage. Oftentimes in the elementary schools, a paraprofessional that works in that classroom may help to cover. We pay them an elevated rate to do that. They know the children, they know what's going on, so that's a good option. The middle school, I believe, does similar structures where they'll use other in-building supports. And at times, if you have a high number of staff out, it can get, it can get tight, but buildings have made it work even at the worst times during COVID where we had high absence rates. Every building made it work every day. So they have some good strategies.
Last resort would be like pulling the interventionist or special educator or something, have them covered, but we need cover. We also need to provide those services, so that is a last resort. And the system that works for the high school is also probably the most expensive system for sub coverage. It's much more what these proposed rates are, but you are getting a high quality teacher who most likely knows the students, is certified in the subject that they're teaching. And because of the size of their departments at the high school, like they could cover a whole day with teachers and enough teachers in the department giving up their prep period to cover the full schedule for that teacher that day. I'm not naive enough to think that this is the answer. It seems every restaurant and store I go into has a help wanted sign, many of them offering rates higher than what we're proposing here. But it can be a rewarding job, and we hope that this would be a slightly higher recognition of people coming in and do this for us.
Jim, what does if you had instead of a teacher, a certified teacher, if you had just a regular sub come in, they wouldn't be teaching the class, would they? They would just be putting forth the teachers, whatever.
There should be lessons left there from the teacher and work for them to do that they can. And like the middle school and high school, there'd be a lead teacher in that department who could also possibly offer some assistance and guidance on how that goes. You know, it also falls on the principal, as so many other things do in that, in the building, that to assist that substitute.
And these people wouldn't be getting benefits, correct?
Correct, they
Okay.
do not get benefits.
My point is with our support staff that we have, yes, they are at a certain rate, but they're getting benefits also. So my point would be if we're down that many subs for the sake of argument, and you make it either 20 or $25, if we really need that many subs, again, for the sake of argument, and understanding, you know, the sports staff that we have, we just did a contract.
Right.
And then these other people aren't getting benefits, so I don't know, maybe that's a wash. I don't know.
So we did discuss that, that very same scenario with other administrators, with Nick. And our concern, a good number of our support staff do not take benefits. So our concern would be that they would say, well, why do I have to commit every
Okay.
day? I'm gonna,
Gotcha.
I'll come to the higher rate. I don't need the benefit, and
Okay.
I'll just substitute 4 days a week and make more money.
Yep.
So we did, yeah, we did think about that.
Nick,
I'd like to ask too, well, go ahead, Scott.
sorry, Nick, just a quick question, maybe a couple of quick questions. Number of total educators, let's just stick with teachers rather than getting into paraprofessionals and office and nurses, but what's the number there that we kind of try and find overall?
So within the SVSU, about 350. Bill, how many Arlington, and I don't know that number yet as quickly, how many BVSU and Arlington teachers would be add on top of that? Bill's there. I know he was here.
Well, that's not how many would be out. That's our teacher
Oh, you're
count.
talking how many are?
350 teachers. I think he was asking, were you
Oh, yeah,
asking?
that's
for
what I'm
our
asking.
Average daily attendance?
Yeah, so if it's 350 and I'm seeing, and I think I've heard before and have been struck by the volume of subs needed on a day-to-day basis, you know, sometimes being as many as 50 out of 350.
Gotcha.
Would that be an incorrect statement?
Yeah, so I you know, just, it's hard to quantify. I think we've had days where we've seen about 10% of staff can happen fairly regularly. So that might be as many as 35 or more teachers on a day, and as many as 65 total staff members that could be out, 65, even 75. We've seen as numbers as high as 100, which puts it, you know, 15% or more of staff. that could be out.
Yeah, I mean,
Staff
I
is
realize.
650, over 650. So that's administrators, support staff, custodians, maintenance workers.
Yeah, that's where I'm
groundskeepers.
going. Where I'm going is if it's, let's say it's 10%, I don't know another industry that functions with 10% of their workforce out. You know, factories don't, grocery stores probably don't open, hospitals probably don't function. To me, the opportunity is for us to, and it probably doesn't happen here, but how do we, what is causing that amount of absenteeism? It can't all just be illness. And how do we collectively as an organization keep the people that we've hired to be there? I realize it's a loaded statement. It's a true statement. 10% is staggering. And I know that some days it's even more.
I'd also like to speak, and my question is, I agree with Fran that all of these rates should be higher, despite what the paraprofessionals are getting right now, because I think that's fairly equitable, and maybe we have to raise the paraprofessionals' salary as well. But I'm looking at the middle one where it says Vermont teacher certified. And why can't we have it just teacher certified? A teacher who's certified in New York, a teacher who's certified in Massachusetts. We're so close to both of these borders that we get a good teacher coming, let's say a retired teacher, and they get almost $450 less than a person who is a Vermont state teacher. So I would think that maybe we should erase the Vermont out of teacher certified.
I have no objection to that. I will tell you that that's probably the smallest percentage of our subcore is certified teachers. So but maybe it'll attract certified teachers from Massachusetts and New York, our border states. But I would have no objection, and I'm getting a nod from the director of HR that he would have no objection if we just said certified teacher.
Thank you.
Are there other comments or questions for Nick or Jim?
I don't know if you can see me, but I have my hand up. It's Shayla.
All right.
We can hear you.
So I'm assuming that to kind of, add on to what Scott was saying, I'm assuming that some of the absenteeism is that regular just time off that they're entitled to in addition to the PTO, right? So they have vacation time that they take throughout the year, and that is what causes the need for the subs. Is that accurate?
So it depends on the employee category. Teachers do not get vacation time. They receive 3 personal days per year, per school year, and 15 sick days per school year. And those are it's unusual for us to be very unusual if we had substitutes for somebody who's on vacation time, because those tend to be maintenance work, not direct student services. So if that employee group that gets vacation time are year-round employees and are not usually ones that are giving direct services to students. It's the ones with direct student services to students that we look for substitutes.
So to Scott's point, so that it's not necessarily, the assumption is that it's not always sickness that is causing the absences.
Well, and then it isn't, because sometimes it could be Family Medical Leave Act, so it's not necessarily the staff member's illness too.
Oh,
And-
right. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Could be
And then you said
the-
3 personal days?
Yes.
This is Leon. This whole thing is what I wanted to make sure that I understood in terms of the categories of the people that are actually being out that create these vacancies for the need for subs and pay rates. So I mean a pay rate increase, but we're having all that 10 and 15 or 12% of folks out. It would be very helpful for us to see every so often what are the categories and areas where we're losing so many people, so that when we're doing contract negotiations, we're doing a whole bunch of other things, we need to understand this stuff so we can do something about it.
Yeah, I think with Frontline, we have a lot more data that's shareable.
Frontline is our attendance software. Staff log on to that to take time off. That's just for those who don't know what that is. So it's an online software that staff go into and put in there that they're going to be out notifying us.
Yeah, so we can relatively easily pull up a report. Jim and I can look and see, okay, there were 39 absences on a given day. How many of those were leave of absences? That always makes up a chunk of them. How many were teachers? Maybe it was 10 that day and 12 paraprofessionals. And so we're able to see that data, and certainly that's something that we could formulate a way to provide in the right circumstances so that you could have access to that.
Thank you.
That was an
And Leon,
excellent.
if you do remember negotiations, we did make the proposal for to alter some sick time things, and that really didn't go anywhere in negotiations. So
Well, with the numbers, we're gonna have to do something. We can't keep drawing pots of money from places we don't have it when we have people employed to be on the job. So we need to look at and explain to them and show them where the problems are.
And I almost feel like if we understood like what their time off ability is and it was used in that way, maybe we can plan better for the sub situation. But I think it's with the unknowing, not understanding like the reasoning for the absences and all that stuff. I don't know. It just, because to your point, Scott, like you said, like 10% of any other industry wouldn't be able to function with 10% of their staff out. So it's like,
And we're trying to give a high quality education to kids.
right, exactly. And it's how are we supposed to plan effectively and have some sort of resource pooling effectively. And I do agree that I think we may want to, I would be in favor of upping it a little bit also, just because I feel like we do need to have, you know, the pool available so that the education of our kids aren't suffering based off of, you know, that time or that need for subs, you know, and not having situations where we can find subs to fill those classes and are those kids suffering. So we definitely need to do something to attract that pool of people. And I like that idea, Jackie, about the Vermont, removing that Vermont and having that ability to get, you know, licensed teachers, certified teachers from other states, because they have that, you know, expertise and that ability. And I don't see why they would have a different rate than a Vermont registered teacher or licensed teacher.
The other suggestion that I have is maybe it, as an incentive for more subs, is to pay for childcare. And I know several school districts do that. And so if you're going to be a sub that day, then you get a voucher for free childcare. Because if you have a child at home and you have to put the child in daycare and then work, then some of that money is kind of like erased.
Are there other questions? Ray?
Can I just ask one more? Oh, go ahead,
Scott
sorry.
has a question.
Scott?
I was also thinking back to when we were doing negotiations. There was some chart that I saw that went through a person's life experience and set a rate based on that. And would that be an opportunity for us to get the retired person who may or may not have a bachelor's degree, but spent 30 years in business or 30 years in the building trades, or but has since probably moved on from that career, but could be a viable, and you know, to say that one is worth 14 and none of those things would be, and that other option isn't worth 18. I'm thinking that could be an opportunity to get a higher quality retired post-career individual that would be added value for the kids, students.
I like that idea, Scott.
Other
Me
questions?
too.
So I agree with all that you're saying, like, you know, I guess it gets down to where the discussion is, you know, what is a living wage? What is a respectable wage to pay somebody and expect them to come every day? But I again go back to, we would have to address what we're going to do with our support staff. Like Jackie, you mentioned, well, maybe we have to adjust their salary. Everything has a bump effect once we start doing that, right? So like, because then we're bumping up against the starting salary for a para. So if you raised that starting salary for a para, then you got somebody who's further along on the steps that, well, now there's not the differential that I used to get rewarded for being here for 10 years is not there anymore. So it is a much bigger discussion than what we can do here. And I guess it's going to come down to like, what does the board want to do? If we're not concerned about going over that threshold, and that's what the 1471 keeps us under that threshold of staying under what the starting salary is for a para-educator, because we argue, well, they do get benefits, because you're right, they may not all take a health insurance benefit, which is cost benefit, but they do get sick days and personal days, so, which, you know, substitutes don't get. So I don't know what is the value of that to somebody. If you don't take them, there's not a lot of value to it, so. But
May I suggest that we table this until we get more hard numbers?
Scott had his hand up.
I was just gonna say perhaps the cap, you have the Vermont or the teacher certified as the cap and you allow the other tiers to kind of fall underneath that. Understanding, recognizing the 1471 to the 2040, 2115 or 2043. And then how can you flex maybe the person who has only an associate's but has been a professional for 30 years in there to kick that level up a notch. But I agree, there may be more discussion needed at a later time.
And I also think, to your point, like with the benefits, do we factor in that benefits in that total cap?
We should.
Because those benefits are available to them, whether they take them or not, they are available to them. So
It's roughly 30%. Would that be
right? Yeah.
the benefit package?
Yes, that's done.
Yes. So I would say like you take that total of with the benefit package and the salary, and then that could potentially be the cap because that's the benefit financially that they're getting. And a substitute doesn't have that benefit option. So they don't get benefits through us. So that's the difference, I think, in my opinion.
And this is Leon. Nick said something earlier, and everybody we've gotten on to the money thing, and we're studying it, and we're still on it. We may not that may not be the problem, and that's what I really want to know and understand. Maybe something about the jobs that we're asking people to come into is such that they may not be wanting to come and be part of the subgroup, or maybe we need to change some about that. We need to understand the total picture, not just say throwing money out here and thinking it's going to make the difference. It may be some other things.
I mean, we can provide a whole host of information. Somebody asked, what's our fringe benefit rate? We can provide that information. We can provide, what percentage of paraprofessionals take the benefits. Those are numbers we know that might help you make a decision. Also, the structure that we have that breaks out teacher subs by degree, that's not universal, and that's not written in any law. Plenty of school districts have a teacher sub rate.
That's it.
Period, and it's one rate, regardless of degree. So there's a ton of flexibility in this model.
I have not seen school systems that have this degree of breakdown. I've seen two rates: a substitute teacher and a certified teacher. You could go that, you come in, because I agree, you come in and do the job. So why should it, if you do the job and you do a good job, for a substitute, does it matter whether you have the high school diploma or associate's degree or bachelor? You're a substitute, you're still coming in doing the same job. And a certified teacher, maybe that's something different. And a nurse, sub-office, sub-parent, different job classification. I agree with that. I honestly don't know what the best, the other things that we've talked about is incentive bonuses. That, if you commit to a week for us, once you sub 5 days for us, you get some type of additional payment. And every 5 days that you come in and sub for us, there's another payment. We don't know what that's going to look like to track. And so we weren't, ready to propose that to you tonight. Some way to increase the core of substitutes and show our commitment to them if they show a commitment to us, and whether that is some type of bonus system for how many days you do is another way to do it without raising the hourly rate.
What we're looking at here is a proposal that may just be a step while the rest of it gets studied and some other ideas get thrown in. I think delaying this doesn't help any of the situations. That's my input.
I agree.
I agree too, but I'm all for simplifying it, like we kind of talked about. That is there a way that before we, move forward and approve it, to just simplify that structure, and to your point, making it, 2 different rates or whatever the circumstances are, rather than, because could that be something that turns people off? You know what I mean? All that whole structure.
I'd love to just throw one more thing out and just because it goes with what Leon was saying. I can assume we have some, call them rock star subs, right? The people who we always call, and when we call them, they show up. And you know, call it 20 of them. Is there a 10-question survey that we could send out to those 20 people that asks some pretty dialed in questions about what do they love about it? What do they dislike most about it? What have they heard from other subs has been an issue over time? Keep it simple, but I would love to see what, and I would even take a stab at writing the questions if it would be helpful, but would love to see what information we could get out of that. You'd probably get more from them than you would the people who you only call and show up once, right? And there's reasons why they're coming, and so find out the reasons why they continue to come, and how can we help make it so that other people have that same experience.
And they might understand why others aren't coming, to your point.
Right.
Jim talked about incentive pay for people who would come and dedicate themselves for a whole week of subbing. What about an incentive pay for teachers who are currently teaching in subs? If they, you know, don't use their sick leave and they don't use their personal days, is there any kind of incentive that we could give to teachers?
That was one area that was in negotiations, Jackie. So that was, you know, would have to, and it really didn't get beyond the proposal stage. So, but I'd say for at least the last two negotiations, there's been some discussion about incentives for not using personal days, or tied, and that would be tied to how many sick days you used. But to those of you who are on the negotiating team, you know, it didn't get a lot of traction in going there. I think the teaching staff is probably open to that idea, but I don't know what the cost, you know, any type of incentive program, you have to weigh, like, what does that incentive cost you for what you gain? And what you gain is then hopefully less staff out and your teachers in the building. But, you know, people do get sick, people do take Family Medical Leave Act, and they're entitled to do that. So there's always going to be a percentage of staff out, regardless of what type of incentive program we put in place.
Right, but we have budgeted for the school year X number of dollars for substitutes of all kinds.
Yep.
And what if, you know, by the end of the year, we have, you know, X number of dollars left over because teachers knew that at the end of the year, that money could get split up according to how many teachers didn't take how many days. And so it would be a total, you know, kind of a teacher community type of incentive to not take as many days, or, you know, I understand family leave days. Are family leave days and sick days the same days?
They can be.
They can.
If you're on FMLA and you have sick time, they run concurrently. If you don't have sick time, FMLA can run without a sick time.
FMLA can be
But they
unpaid.
are all calculated. When I say there are 100 absences, that would absolutely include anyone on FMLA as well. So it's good to keep that in mind.
No. And Jackie, while that proposal has merit, that'd be subject to collective bargaining. And I remind you, we just signed a 2-year contract with the support staff and a 3-year contract with teachers. So we will open a year from now with the support staff and 2 years from now with teachers. So we could certainly make sure that that's on the table then. But right now, I don't see how we could accomplish anything like that.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking, if there's a pool of money left over at the end of the year from not having substitutes, it could be issued as bonuses to teachers who have the fewest sick days or fewest personal days that they have taken.
A proposal very similar to that was discussed in negotiations, but did not actually get onto the table.
I
Yes.
think we're at the point where we're beating this to death without all the numbers in front of us and not all the people we need at the table. If I could suggest that we move forward with a motion on the substitute pay rates, possibly eliminating the Vermont, the teacher certified, and then create a committee to get together with Nick and whoever else would be interested in doing this. We can hash out the details in an organized way with some numbers in front of us, if that's agreeable to the board.
So moved.
Is that,
Second.
all right, we are, Scott has moved the substitute pay raise as presented without the Vermont on teacher certified.
That's correct.
And we have a second from Fran?
Yeah.
Is there further discussion? I would like to suggest that Ray and Leon at least be part of this committee along with Nick and whoever else might be interested. And we
Could you repeat the proposal, please?
The proposal is to approve the substitute pay rates as presented without the VT in front of teacher certified rate.
In other words, VT would be eliminated.
Yes,
Correct.
Thank you.
we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? And the motion carries. If I could designate a committee to go further on this, if Ray and Leon approve of that, and I don't know if Todd or Nicole from Arlington would be interested. We could form a committee and get together with Nick and begin to study these things.
Just a couple more things. You may be aware, school started this week. Our staff returned Monday, and I was very grateful that we were able to get Monday in. There was one point on Sunday that it certainly looked like the track of the storm was going to be different, that would have really impacted us having the staff return on Monday, but we were able to do it. Students returned today, only ninth graders at the high school, at Mount Anthony High School, 10th, 11th, and 12th will return tomorrow. We did not do our opening day with staff celebration at the high school auditorium. We decided it was not a wise move to bring back 600 plus people into the auditorium. So we did a mobile welcome back. We had a bus tour. I want to thank Dufour Transportation and our bus driver, Jim from Shaftesbury. Last name I don't know, but he was a wonderful driver for us yesterday as we did a tour of as many schools as we could. We'll be we're at the high school this afternoon. We'll be at the middle school tomorrow afternoon, and next week we'll do Woodford and Arlington. They all would have happened on Monday and Tuesday, but the bus tour got canceled on Monday because when I had to commit to the bus, it looked like the day was going to be very iffy. So we called it the central office welcome back bus tour. We had a banner on the bus, and many of the staff from central office who normally are in the gymnasium on opening day, and staff can come and talk to HR and talk to finance and talk to student support services. Instead, we brought it to staff. The schools were great. They had pop-up tents and tables out front. We had a welcome back gift for everyone. So thanks to everybody that helped organize that. It was a very busy day between some COVID issues and transportation issues, some of which you heard about tonight. We do have a protocol involved. We did have a positive case today at one of our elementary schools that has resulted in some students that will be required to quarantine. We have an established protocol. So what we do not do, like in the early days of COVID, we would have made a public announcement and, everybody would know. Only the school that is affected gets notified. There is a notice on our Facebook page. There is a notice on our website, because not all families get the K-12 alert from the principal. Every school has its own little ways of communicating with parents. Some do better in emails, some do K-12 alerts. Today was a case that parents received emails, and only those who need to be quarantined are notified. No one else has a right to know who had to be quarantined. So the process we're going to use, because we do expect that we are going to have other positive cases, that once the contact tracing is completed, if there is a positive case, let's back up a little, in the school, there still is an isolation room at every school. Positive cases in the isolation room, notification to get the positive case, whether it's a staff or a child, and take them out of the building. Contact tracing is done by our COVID-19 coordinator and the school nurse, and we submit that to the vendor that the state has used for quarantine. It used to be the Department of Health. Now there's a vendor that the state is using for that, and basically they're telling us that's how we get the information, who, based on what the contact tracing has said, who needs to quarantine and for how long. So that's the only thing. We do not make a broad announcement, and that is the process that we use going forward. So whatever notification system that particular school uses to notify the majority of their parents, that's what they will do, whether it's a K-12 alert or email. And then our secondary would be our Facebook and our website, and it'll remain on the website. That's how we will archive how this is going forward. I'm hoping that we're not going to have so many cases, then we can still stay operating, but given the vaccination rates of the populations of the students in our building, it's going to be a challenge. Transportation issue, a couple of things that, I am committed to, if there's a seat on a bus, putting a child on it. I don't get tied up in rules. I get more to how do we deliver those services to those students. We're coming off a year that was so different that we could not accommodate all the students that needed transportation, that we had to bump back the distance that you could get on a bus. People who normally thought they could ride, were told they couldn't ride last year because of how restricted our capacity. And even if we wanted to pay for more buses and we had the funds, they didn't have the buses or the drivers to do that. So let's move forward to this year. You heard me say earlier, I made the commitment today that we can take that restriction of a primary resident, that if these families need childcare. I get that. But there are some things that I can't. You're not eligible for transportation. We do have school choice now. And we have families who are looking for transportation, even though they signed up for school choice, and their child is at a school outside of their attendance, and now they're upset when we say you can't have transportation. It was on the form you filled out when you got, but even with that said, I'm still willing to look at individual cases and say, like, if there's a bus that's going by your childcare facility from the school, and that's, you drove them there in the morning to school because you're coming from another town. Let's say you're coming, from Shaftesbury going to Pownell because it's, we allowed school choice there because it's more convenient for you there. And then the child care center is there. Why wouldn't I say, if I have room on the bus, why wouldn't I let you be able to take that seat there? So, and that's different than what we did last year because we didn't have the capacity. And then there's always issues with transportation, and it's going to take a few days before we shake down. I know that there was delays today. I got email reports from some schools and from our transportation coordinator about what the delays are. All I can do is sit here and tell you that I'm committed to making it work, making things run on time, but there will be snags, and we all have to understand that. And then the question about Willowbrook brought up, and you heard me say it, I'll repeat it again. We use transportation software to plan bus routes. And the policy is a radius from the school building. It's not the actual distance. Today I was out driving some bus routes too, to make sure for myself that what it was. So I did drive some bus routes today because I like to be able to really visualize what I'm telling somebody. So we look at the software. Willowbrook is within it is less than 1.5 miles from the middle school in the radius, and that's what the policy says. You go out and drive it, it's a little bit longer than that, so that could be where the confusion comes from. When we would put that route in from Willowbrook to the middle school into our software in previous years, the software is sophisticated enough that it comes up red along the path, which tells us that we can't let anybody walk there regardless of what the distance is, because it's not considered safe. The town spent a lot of time, effort, and money to create sidewalks and a bridge crossing over the stream to create that walking path, all towards a healthier population, getting people out and moving, as well as reducing traffic. So there are now walkways, there are cross buttons there, but I suggest that you do have to cross Route 7. So I can see where someone could be concerned about that, but it's the policy that is currently with the MAU board. The other thing that I want to mention about transportation that is a lost my thought on that. I don't know where I was, sorry. And it's not in my notes, but
Never happens to
yeah.
anybody else.
Did I tell you it's been a very busy first day?
Really.
And yeah, and it's a very important fact, but now I apologize to everyone why I can't remember. Maybe it'll come up before we finish, but school choice is not eligible for transportation. Doesn't mean that I'm still not going to say no to somebody who may. There's an open seat. I can't guarantee it. I can't promise to school choice. You made the choice to send your child to another school. There are no buses that go from your house to that school. So that's why we don't offer. But if I can help you after school, I really don't see why I couldn't do that if there was a seat on the bus, if there is. We will continue to look at Willowbrook because I said it is, and that's, yeah. I forgot the other important part. Where people get caught up sometimes and like, oh yeah, we may be one SU, but we're multiple school districts that have different walk zones. The walk zone and I'm not familiar with what Arlington's is yet, but the walk zone for the elementary school is 1 mile and it's 1.5 miles for the middle school and high school for MAU. So they have different walk zones. No one from the elementary school is supposed to walk more than 1 mile. So what happens, because a parent of a 5th grader may say, the bus stop was right across the street from me last year. Now this year it's down the street because it's an MAU bus stop, is not necessarily the same bus stop as a Union Elementary bus stop. Because you're in that 1 to 1.5 mile zone, you got a bus as an elementary student, but you wouldn't qualify for a bus as an MAU student. And that does sound ridiculous to explain to a parent, but that's the parameters that we do. Any questions for me?
Yeah, I have one, and maybe several. Leon, I would, because it was so many concerns tonight, I would like to see you come back for the next SVSU meeting to tell us about how these things have gotten resolved, because everybody needs to look at policy number 3100 and then go out here and assess. So the people involved in making sure that parents are getting the notification of whether their kid can be picked up or not picked up. A whole lot of things need to be looked at out here to get it all squared away. this ain't the first time we've had a bus route. And we shouldn't be having these kind of problems.
I don't have a question
No.
on bus route. I just would like you to reiterate what the mask situation is
Yep.
gonna be in schools. I
Right.
get emails and
So,
phone calls. and
thank you
boy,
for-
oh boy.
Thank you for a reminder. So the Union Elementary Board at their meeting 2 weeks ago voted to use the AOE guidance that masks would be worn, but not for just the first 10 days of school. But through their September meeting, and they will reassess at their September meeting whether they will continue mask wearing. The AOE guidance is that we should have the first 10 days wearing masks so that we have time to calculate vaccination rates, and that we should continue to wear masks until 80% of those eligible to be vaccinated are vaccinated. So for our elementary students, that's a long way off. At the MAU meeting last week, the board voted to extend that even further, that they're going to require masks to be worn through the end of the first semester, which is effectively mid-January. So I assume, I'll make the recommendation to the to the Union Elementary Board at their September meeting, that they should at least extend it to match what the MAU board did, so that we have less confusion for families. Like, well, why? And I don't see where the Union Elementary Board is going to discontinue mask wearing at their September meeting. It's just, it was done as a starting point based on the guidance that the AOE gave. My understanding is because there is not a state of emergency declared by the governor, the AOE doesn't have the authority to require that we wear masks. What they did say is that boards and the superintendent have the authority to regulate your own school buildings, and the board can have that authority. Superintendent can make the recommendation to require masks in their building. So we are wearing masks until the boards vote otherwise, but the recommendation is we follow the guidance that 80% of those who are eligible to be vaccinated are vaccinated. So I think we should we'll be wearing masks at least through January. No.
Okay, I don't have too much to say in the chair's report, but it's time of the year when we have to start the superintendent's evaluation. Those of us who are on the superintendent evaluation committee include Leon, Ray, Jayla, Nicole Whalen, and myself. I'll work with central office, I guess, to figure out.
And I do have a draft of proposed goals for you too.
And as a board, we might want to consider goals also for the superintendent. So I'll work with the superintendent's office to get us a timetable, where and how we can meet. I guess the Zoom is possible.
Yes, you can do this.
So we could do that kind of thing. The policy says no later than the end of September, we should begin this process. So that's policy 2600. Anybody wants to look that up? And Jim already addressed my concern about masks. And I have nothing to. Are there other issues anybody wishes to bring before the board? We will be taking action on that, but we can use this for future agendas. Any to adjourn, being none. For your information is included a number of nominations and the budget, student enrollment, and we have a motion to adjourn from Fran. Do we have a second?
Second it.
We have all kinds of seconds. Yes. And it's Scott will get credit out this time. All those in favor? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions?
Thank
We
you.
are adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Night.
Good night. And thank you. You are okay